This is from Margaret Wheatley in a book called Who Do We Choose to Be? Facing Reality, Claiming Leadership, Restoring Sanity. She says, as a lifelong activist focused on changing leadership in large systems, as one still inside those large systems, as a consultant, advisor, and friend, I realized years ago that large-scale change was not possible. Leaders were grasping for control, overreacting to crises rather than thinking systematically, treating people as units rather than as humans. Yet I also met and worked with extraordinary leaders who were creating islands of sanity where good work still got done, where people enjoyed healthy relationships in the midst of chaotic conditions, fierce opposition, heartbreaking defeats, lack of support, isolation, loneliness, and slander. I have been with them in circumstances that caused most other leaders to give up and walk away, yet they kept going. You will learn about a few of them in these pages. Several years ago, in the face of irreversible global problems and with the devolution of leadership, I began to challenge every leader I met with these questions. Who do you choose to be for this time? Are you willing to use whatever power and influence you have to create islands of sanity that evoke and rely on the best human qualities to create, produce, and persevere? Now I am asking you. Good morning. This is our last Sunday of April, but it feels like, as far as the weather is concerned, the first Sunday of March. The whole month we've been exploring the theme of possibility. And today's theme is the possibility of community. The question is, can we be an island of sanity together? Let it be a motivating question. Sometimes we get it right. Sometimes, not so much. Who here has been on a committee or a task force or engaged in something like a fair when there was a little bit of conflict? Okay, yeah. Who here has served on a committee, task force, or something like a church fair when the meeting just went on a little too long and people got that painted smile to keep themselves from pulling all their remaining hair out? Yeah, okay. All right. But who here also served on a committee, task force, or helped in something like a church fair and you had fun and learned something new about someone else, and maybe you grew a little bit? All right, see, so it's like all the same people raising their hands. If you haven't raised your hands, time to get involved. Right? Yeah. I often compare being a church to any other kind of community like ours, like yoga. Okay, we get stretched, but we all become a little more fit, a little more flexible, a little more healthy together. We look around and we know that we are part of a community, a part of something that cares for us and makes us more whole. No matter what kind of madness is happening out there on the national stage, we know that there's this place called Murray, and we can be an island of sanity together. Now, here's the sad truth about the situation, though. I went to, this is a little story, the other day, I went to a surprise birthday party for a friend, and I ended up striking up a conversation with a mindfulness instructor. And she asked me what the sermon was about, and I said, well, it's Islands of Sanity. I quickly asked her what she thought about the subject, and she looked at me and she said, well, it's too bad we're not talking about oceans of sanity with little pockets here and there of islands of chaos, right? If that were the case, we'd all be happy. I mean, a long time ago when our nation was being forged, Unitarians and Universalists and like-minded folk exerted enough influence on our nation to put things like reason and fairness and inherent worth and dignity of all men front and center. And I said men because it was men at that point. And there were times when there was a beacon on a hill that shone brightly and blazed brighter still than the torch held aloft by Lady Liberty when the tired and the poor of the world came flooding in and made us mighty and mixed. And the best and brightest of everyone's children had a chance to really make it. And we became strong and bold and an intelligent, creative nation. Slavery was banished and women gained the right to vote and eventually won the right for equal pay and to have control over their own uteruses. We harnessed public lands in every state to build mighty universities. We were able to extend higher education to millions of people whose previous generations would have never known what a college education looked like. Every nation was in awe, and we served as an example of what human dignity looked like, even as we became the wealthiest people the world had ever seen. And these were the rights not freely given by Gilded Age lords, but rights wrested with real blood by the workers and freedom fighters and the organizers and the good troublemakers. And there was still racism, and there was still sexism, but it looked like for a time that the moral arc of the universe, though long, was inevitable, like it was an immovable force of destiny. And then came the backlash. And people hated this diversity. The people who hated this diversity, the people who hated having strong women around, began to ask, what if we could create this kind of reality bubble with so-called moral majority who would be white and fundamentalist Christian and nationalist? And we told everyone that this is what it was really like to be an American. And what if we could create a propaganda machine that would extol conservative values and denigrate liberal ones without any fact check? And what if we began to spin conspiracy theories with elections that were being stolen from us? And what if every time lawsuits were filed against us for any criminal acts we created, we could just say that all those people were lying and it was a witch hunt? And we could convince enough people that our lies were true, enough so that they would vote for us. And we could be above the law. At first, people just laughed. But slowly, over 3 or 4 decades, they've been working hard and they've chipped it away and they've created their own reality bubbles. Islands, echo chambers. And these places grew hand over fist, grew in power and influence, financed by oligarchs. Places like this community over the last 4 decades have shrunk, have become take it for granted, polarized, left behind. Nobody saw our value. And here we are. This is the reality of our national stage, and it is an extremely wobbly stage. To get on that stage, once you had to be the best or the brightest. To get on that stage, You once had to be moderately virtuous and look to most people like you led a moral life. But not anymore. That stage is jam full of idiots with very big guns. And you know, where we are today is not just because of Ronald Reagan's moral majority or the MAGA movement. Ultimately, we are here in this place and time because over time, Western culture has constructed a kind of default self that sees the self as distinct in direct competition with other selves, other individuals. And it's a zero-sum game. And this has been amplified by our smartphones and our algorithmically enhanced news feeds. And it feeds the part of our brains that are wired for flight or flight. They're incapable of empathy, incapable of any real creative thought. Look at today's headlines. What madness is this? More shots fired. We don't know. At this point, it was aimed at the president or the press. But this helps no one. But here we are. Despite this, here together. Margaret Wheatley wrote this piece in our reading during the first Trump administration. It was a frustrating time for her and her work. Decades long, helping organizations become more diverse and kinder, more compassionate. And she saw the writing on the wall of how important it was for progressive-minded Americans to create their own islands of sanity. And here we are, 2026. Shall we build islands of sanity? I think we must. See, Murray is a place that has a completely different narrative, one that does not rely on just one scriptural tradition, but many, and also includes awe and wonder available from this very important kind of human activity known as science. And there's more of the human being than just that which is wired for fight or flight. It's called awe and wonder. And we can touch that place here and celebrate that together. And we can do an awful lot of good work. We can have fun. We can grow. We can organize. We can network. We can start to elect people that we know and love. We can put the values of reason and diversity back in the center of things where it belongs. And we can correct the course of this apogee of the moral universe that it can once again come back down to earth. This is the Reverend Dr. Omega S. Burkhart shared in the latest edition to UU World in a much longer poem entitled Frente al Precipicio. She writes, all of us here are a sanctuary against retribution, control, extermination. We are resistance. Somos la resistencia. All of us here are a powerful sanctuary, one that provides a foundation, comfort, joy, a place from which we drink the elixir of resilience, and where we also may stoke the forging fire of our faith. When the bombs fall, and today they fall, sent by a warmongering force, coaxed by moral failure, an aggressive and preventable war, we are a revolution. Somos la revolución. Somos la revolución de amor contra la indiferencia, contra este fracaso moral. To me, this is a beautiful notion. Yes, as the resistance amounts to nonviolent civil disobedience, it's a wonderful idea. Let us, in the spirit of this poem, become what UU theologian Sharon Welch calls a generative community. One that begets a generative democracy. And what does generative mean? Life-giving, life-affirming, life-supporting. A little while ago, we partnered with Indivisible Mansfield, which now has Indivisible Attleboro, Indivisible North Attleboro, and Indivisible Plainville, right? And people began to think about how they should support one another, how they can give care and help to one another, because everybody's feeling so fractured and defensive and fearful. And jobs are difficult, and inflation is out of control, and housing is out of control. And all of this is happening, right? So they said, we'll create a mutual aid society. Right? And we've got people coming to our church, and they're giving aid to each other, like children's clothes and assistance if they need it, or what if somebody is been targeted by ICE and they need help? Right? And it's a really great dovetail. And it just shows me how much great work friends can do for friends. Right? And that's what this is. That's all this is a group of people standing up who have similar values and saying, we'll do it. Right? Because in order for us to change the national picture, it means that we have to stand up and support one another, and we have to stand up and support other organizations in our community and our world, right, that are doing the same thing, right? And we can make a difference, because we will be the difference. That's how this all works, right? For years and years, places like this have been dwindling and getting weaker and more fractious. But things are changing now. Things are changing here, and things are changing in many UU congregations around the country. And it's going to make a difference, right? It's going to make a difference. And you are doing it. And back to what Justin Keith said when he thanked me for supporting him, all I was doing was forwarding money, right? I was offering to forward. He didn't have to take it. I was just offering to forward money that you have all raised as a discretionary fund to help people who really need it, right? So let's turn to each other right now. Stand up, turn to each other. If you've been sequestered in one little corner of the sanctuary, I invite you to get out and mingle a little bit. And you can give each other the namaste bow. You can handshake. If you have permission, you can hug each other. All right. Well, in this generosity of our love together, let us give to one another so we can continue to thrive. Thank you.